Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thanks for tuning in for another video, really appreciate it. This video is going to be all about nutrition and hypothalamic amenorrhea. And I guess pretty much the nutritional principles I followed during my HA recovery and how you might be able to incorporate some of those if you're going through the same thing, or even if you're just going through weight gain. I'll give quite a bit of an overview in terms of how I fit in all the food, how I increase my calories, the kinds of foods I was eating. So hopefully it's useful for quite a range of people depending on your goals right now. So I thought I'd give you a bit of a background overview, I suppose, of kind of my nutrition across the years and how my diet's changed and tracking versus not tracking. So I was actually a vegetarian probably for about 15 years from the age of 13. And then I slowly started adding in some meat again. So I pretty much only eat chicken and beef at the moment. And I've always eaten fish. I made those changes when I did start to get into weightlifting a little bit more because I was finding I was a lot hungrier. But this is kind of going back 5 years where there was a lot of corn products, but there wasn't all the kind of sort of vegan meat substitutes that there are right now that are actually really filling. I just probably wasn't as clued up then as I would be now in terms of how I could have made meals more filling. So I think I just gradually decided to start eating meat again just to see if that would help, and I have to say it did. And I always used to like chicken before being vegetarian anyway, so it was an easy one for me to just go back to, whereas I've never actually liked the tastes of other meats. And then when I got a personal trainer about 5 years ago, that's when I started to kind of become a lot more knowledgeable and aware of what I was eating. So prior to that, I just ate normal things that, I didn't really think too much about calories or macro. And then I guess again, when I started strength training, I realized the importance of this as I started to, I guess, become more absorbed in things like Instagram, where there was a lot of information on there in terms of macros and calories. And I started listening to lots of podcasts on it, just becoming so much more interested in it that naturally I then became more aware of what I was eating, and it did lead me to start tracking. So at that time, I think I was just following a general bog standard macro calorie split. I wasn't trying to cut, I wasn't trying to bulk. So I think I was pretty much on a maintenance kind of calories, but I actually was doing it initially to make sure I was eating enough with the training that I was doing. I was actually using it as a really useful tool, and I probably tracked pretty much strictly for about 2 years. So through this time, I did go through one bulk phase and then a maintenance, and it was really useful. I learned so much more about food, what I was eating, about the macros, about making sure I was getting enough protein, which I previously wasn't. Even things like getting enough healthy fats, I became quite aware of all those kind of things quite a few years ago. But then I moved in with my boyfriend at the time, and I guess it became something that I was like, I don't want to be standing here tracking out all the calories, all the meals. It kind of just takes away from the fun of eating, particularly when you're not on your own. I think when you're on your own, it's easier because it's just a habit, and there's nobody there to hold up while you put it all into your MyFitnessPal. And when I moved in with my boyfriend, it was something I kind of thought, actually, I still want to be doing this. And initially it was actually quite hard. I found it hard to let go of the control of tracking, and that temptation to just I'll just stick this in, or I'll just stick that in and just see what it is. And initially I actually reduced it slowly, so I maybe tracked breakfast and lunch and a snack or something, but then I wouldn't track dinner. And I did this for quite a while, and then I would maybe I won't track at weekends, or I won't track Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then I actually went on holiday, and obviously on holiday, you just don't track. And I came back and just decided, right, I'm not going back to it. And I think going on holiday was a good way for me to just kind of cut it out. And then I haven't really tracked again since. So that was probably about 3 years ago, maybe. I still track things like my recipes and things like that for when I'm sharing them. But other than that, I haven't really tracked, except just before I went all in. So when I decided to go all in, so that was beginning of July last year, I tracked for a couple of days. This then gave me the information to know what I was currently eating and what I needed to get to. So I knew I wanted to be eating at least 2,500 calories, as that's the minimum required to get your period back according to the research. But in order to get there, I kind of needed to know where I was at if I wasn't then going to track for that period of time. So I was on 2,000 calories at that time. So I knew then obviously that I needed to be eating at least 500 more. So it kind of just made it quite simple. But I knew I just didn't want to have to track the whole process, because for me, it was almost like becomes a bit of a chore when you haven't done it for a while. I think it is much more of a like, oh well, I can't be bothered to eat this because I've got to track it. And obviously that completely defeats the purpose when you were trying to recover from HA. So what I did was, rather than tracking, I tried to split up my meals. So what I would do is I had breakfast probably at about 6:30. So that was breakfast number 1. And then breakfast number 2, I would have at around about 9 o'clock. And 4 days of the week, I would have a workout in between. I might have a walk in between, or I would, there wouldn't be anything in between those times. But I found that a really good way of trying to get at least 600 calories in my first 2 meals. And my first meal, as I mentioned in my last video, was peanut butter and toast, and banana, of course. Peanut butter, banana and toast. And then my second meal would often be something like oats or a smoothie or pancakes, waffles, anything really. But I tried to aim for at least 600 calories between the 2 meals. And it was rough ballpark, because like I say, I wasn't tracking. But quite easily I could kind of work out in my head, the first breakfast was about 300 calories, the second one needs to be at least 300 calories. And actually sometimes for breakfast ended up being more than 600, but that was always the minimum. And then I would have a lunch at about 12:30, 1, and I made sure that was another 600 calories. And then I would have a snack at around 3ish, and I made sure that was about 300 calories. A dinner at about 6, 7, and then again that was another 600 calories. And then I would have a dessert, and that would be about 600 calories as well. And I was pretty much eating every 2 to 3 hours. And I found that doing it that way meant I didn't sort of suffer with that really horrible feeling of being absolutely stuffed and bloated and uncomfortable. So I think through spreading it out every 2 to 3 hours, you don't all of a sudden get to the end of the day and think, oh gosh, like I've probably only had about 1,500 calories today. I've got to eat another 1,000 within the space of 3 hours. And I know some people also get into the habit, and I probably was like this when I was tracking, of maybe not eating so much in the day and then eating loads in the evening. And that actually, to be honest, used to always work okay for me. But I think when you're going through HA, you need to eat at least 2,500 calories, you end up banking too much at the end, and it just becomes uncomfortable to eat that amount. So I definitely think that it was useful to sort of, like I say, eat every 2 to 3 hours and start quite early in the morning as soon as you get up. And I know some people, again, don't really like breakfast, and there is other ways of doing it, of course, and I'm not saying that you have to eat breakfast if you're recovering from HA, but they do advise that you should eat within half an hour of waking, so you're not putting your body under too much stress. You're straight away, you've had that period of fasting, obviously, while you're sleeping. Straight away, you're fueling your body when you wake up. And I do think for me, I mentioned it in my video on exercise and HA, I think that really helped, because it meant I was also getting 2 good meals around a workout in the morning. And straight away, I was fueling my body, rather than what I previously would have done, would have just been go to the gym. And then that was, I was getting up and then going for probably at least an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours without then eating and exercising, which just definitely isn't optimal when recovering from HA. And like I said, I went straight up to pretty much 2,500 calories plus, probably some days eating up to 3,000, if not more. And I did this straight away. So when I decided to go all in, I decided I just needed to go for it. So I know you can do things like, some people might have heard of the term reverse dieting before, and that's where you just try and gradually increase your calories up to a certain amount to try and increase your maintenance. But for me, I think I just needed to go for it. Didn't want to kind of spend weeks or months just gradually increasing 100 calories here and there, as I think it's too easy then just to fall back into old habits. I knew I kind of needed to be like, right, today, from now on, I've got to make sure I eat that amount. And yes, it's a big jump just to all of a sudden increase your calories by 500-600. if not more. If you're eating less, it could be increasing them by 1,000 for some people. But actually for me, I found that way more useful than a gradual approach. But again, that would be individual. I know some people have done it where they've sort of gradually bumped up their calories. I think it depends on how much you've eaten before and how much you can tolerate. For me, I've always been a hungry person. So the idea of eating 2,500 calories for me, I knew wasn't actually going to be that much of a challenge because I'm always hungry. So I've never suffered with that feeling of, oh, you know, I don't want to eat anymore. And even throughout that time, throughout that 3 months where I was really pushing calories, although yes, don't get me wrong, there was times when I was really full, I never got to the point of feeling like, oh, I don't want to eat my next meal. I was always still hungry for it. So in terms of macros, obviously, like I say, I didn't track, but I did, obviously, those 2 days before I went all in, and I knew I needed to increase healthy fats and I knew I needed to increase carbs. So my protein was absolutely fine. So I didn't sort of aim to increase my protein at all, but really tried to increase the amount of carbs and fats I was eating. Probably eating about 40 grams of fats, and I tried to make sure I was eating at least 60 to 70 grams. Again, very rough. I didn't track it. And with the carbs as well, I think I was probably more around 200 grams of carbs a day. And I knew I should be aiming for probably at least 300 grams of carbs. So those were the two kind of macros that when I was changing my diet in terms of what I was eating, I added in. So I did things like I made loads of different tahini bakes. If you see my Instagram and seen some of the bakes that I have on there, or on my blog, cleanleanbakes.com, you'll find loads of tahini recipes, as tahini is full of healthy fats and it's a really versatile ingredient you can just use in sweet and savoury. So I would use it in lots of baking, like tahini and banana bread, as well as in things like dressings for veg and salads. So I would do like a tahini and olive oil and soya sauce, lemon juice kind of dressing. And again, that's an easy way of probably just adding like an extra 70, 80 calories to a meal that I previously wouldn't have included. So, you know, things like adding lots of avocado to smoothies, avocado to salads, peanut butter, obviously. So I was having peanut butter every single day on toast. Just snacking on things like almonds, seeds, adding extra seeds to my yogurt bowls. It's quite, when you actually look at it, it's quite easy to add in, particularly things like healthy fats. So it's quite easy to add in, just, you know, using oil when you're cooking. And then with carbs, I knew when I was tracking that I just wasn't eating enough carbs. And to be honest with you, I was probably like many of you, I was probably guilty of thinking, oh, you know, if there's anything I should sort of not be eating too much of, it's carbs. And I don't know where this notion came from, that carbs are bad, or, you know, you shouldn't be eating this and you shouldn't be eating that, and, well, you know, white bread, white pasta, it's the devil. And I definitely did fall into that trap. So for me, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to eat all the carbs. And I definitely did. I remember going to the supermarket and thinking, I'm just going to add in loads of stuff into my basket that I never would normally add. So, you know, things like pasta, I probably wouldn't have had pasta that often. You know, I was your one making your like courgette noodles and lots of low carb substitutes because I thought it was better for me to get more veg in. But actually, you need both. And no wonder, you know, my body couldn't recover from my workouts and it was too much stress on my body because I just wasn't given the carbs to fuel it. So yeah, like I say, I was eating pasta again, I was eating bread. I mean, I've done loads of posts about bread on Instagram. As I think, it's one of those things that for me, I would probably have 1 or 2 slices a week max because I kind of felt like it wasn't the healthiest choice. But actually bread is just, you know, it's just flour, there's nothing wrong with bread. And now I eat bread every single day pretty much. And, you know, sometimes I'll have 4 or 5 slices a day because I love it. And it's something that actually I just didn't have because I felt like I shouldn't be having it rather than wasn't having because I didn't enjoy it. And I absolutely love, sourdough, just who doesn't love sourdough? So definitely that was one of probably the key carbs that I would say I added into my diet and just massively helped. But just generally increasing portion sizes. So I've always eaten a lot of rice, so I just eat more rice. I've always eaten quite a lot of potatoes, sweet potato, white potato. Again, I just made sure I was eating bigger portions of everything. What I found actually quite useful was to get my boyfriend to sometimes plate up my food. So I was making sure that I was making enough, basically, to, you know, man-sized portions. And then, you know, I'd sometimes be like, oh, how much would you have of this? And, you know, I think because you get so used to just automatically putting stuff on your plate and thinking, oh, that's enough, it does take quite a lot to change those habits and think, oh, no, I need more of this. Sometimes I would just say, well, you plate it up, or I would do things like, oh, you make the mashed potato, because I know he would add in loads of milk, loads of butter, and you know, add cheese, which is something I previously wouldn't have done before, because I'm like, oh, you know, it's unnecessary calories, when God, it just makes mashed potato taste amazing, so why not? Obviously, he knew what I was trying to do as well, so he would really encourage me. You know, he'd be like, oh, let's get dessert. And I mean, I've always eaten dessert. I've always had my yogurt balls and all those kind of things. So I was probably, you know, getting dessert and then having a couple of bits of chocolate and sweets and just whatever I fancied, really. Ice cream is a good one. I mean, it's very high in calories and, you know, it's not very filling. That was one I was always adding to my yogurt bowls, and I kind of used to go for the sort of healthier alternatives of ice cream, and I still do now because I enjoy them. But, you know, I'll go for your standard Ben & Jerry's and stick a couple of scoops on there, because that's easily a few hundred calories just added without even thinking about it. And I think for people who sometimes suffer with the feeling of being too full and not being hungry enough to eat, I would say just look at what you're eating. So I did have to reduce the amount of fruit and veg I was eating. I still ate it, definitely, because I still wanted to be healthy, but I did reduce it because those foods do naturally fill you up. So if you're eating, you know, lots of kale, lots of spinach, lots of broccoli, yeah, they are great for you. And like I say, I still included those things, but they're going to fill you up. Whereas actually what you need is more of your high calorie foods that aren't quite so filling. And that also helps with bloating as well. So I know some people struggle a lot with bloating, and I went through phases with bloating. Probably initially, the first few weeks, I had quite a few issues with bloating because I had massively increased my calories overnight. But what I did during those times was reduce things like the fruit and veg, which I think can cause a little bit more bloating. And I was eating quite high calorie, just easy to digest foods. So things like ice cream and chocolate, and just eating what I really fancied. So if I fancied a big pizza, I was eating a big pizza. And I think if you're eating what you really want to eat, you'll eat it, and you know, you'll be quite happy about it. Whereas I think if you're trying to overthink it and think, oh, you know, I want to eat a lot of calories, but I still want to be healthy and I still got to do this, I think you're sort of almost looking at it the wrong way. I think you've almost got to just put all those things to the back of your mind, all your thoughts on what's good or bad foods, or what's clean, what's not clean, and just eat. And I know I'm probably making it sound a lot easier than it is, and believe me, it wasn't like it was the easiest thing for me either, and it did take time. But I think when you just stop thinking about it, it does become more natural just to eat those kind of foods. I mean, now I don't even think about it, you know, having pizza, having chocolate, have all those kind of things every day, having lots of bread, having burgers, you know, just whatever I want, I'll eat now. Whereas previously I would have been like, oh, well, I've already had bread today, I can't have bread again, or I had pizza last night, so I couldn't have a burger tonight because that's kind of too quite unhealthy. You know, all those kind of thought processes I went through. But now I wouldn't even think about it. And I think you've just got to train your mind to almost think about food in a very different way. I no longer put any, you know, I don't have any labels of whether food's good or bad. Food is just food, and it's there to be enjoyed, not to overanalyze. And like I say, I have completely been there, so I'll hold up my hands and say, you know, I've been there when I've done that. But I think you've just got to really push yourself to change that mindset. And you'll be surprised that it won't have a lot of negative effects on you. I mean, I felt like I had loads of energy. I never felt sluggish. I never felt like, you know, I was overeating and just felt horrible. All those kind of things I think that some people sometimes think that they might feel if they are eating slightly more unhealthy foods. But for me, I felt great on it. And I think it's because I was actually, for once, really giving my body the fuel it needed. And actually, when I was looking at things like the amount of carbs I was adding in, I read a bit of information on the higher concentration of glucose in your body, the more likely you are to increase your FSH and LSH hormones, your sort of hormones for your cycle. So for me, I was like, well, if that happens, then why not eat more of these kind of foods that do cause an increase in glucose? So things like your white bread, your pasta, all those things have been shown to actually have positive effects. So again, it's why I included those kind of foods in my diet. Other little tips that I found really useful was buying a lot more full fat foods. So for example, things like full fat milk or full fat Greek yogurt rather than getting the 0% Greek yogurt. Just get easier over time. I think you've almost got to train your body that is used to having quite small portions of food, and sometimes it's hard to recognize that feeling of being actually truly full. I think when you're so used to almost stopping before you get full, and I probably was guilty of that. I didn't really ever like the feeling of being full, so I would avoid it. Whereas once you start getting used to it, it's an amazing feeling actually. And I think that feeling of feeling like, oh gosh, I've really given my body exactly what it needs and I feel full and I feel satisfied. It's something that it took a while for me to get used to, because I hadn't felt that in a long time. Don't get me wrong, I had the odd occasions where I would feel really full and I would eat loads, but 9 times out of 10, I probably was always stopping myself before I got to that point of really feeling full. It just gets easier and easier to get comfortable and happy with that feeling. And knowing a lot of it is probably psychological. So some of the feelings I think of, I feel full, I feel bloated. And I think some of those can, obviously, don't get me wrong, they're true feelings. But I think sometimes they can be brought on by that psychological barrier of almost giving yourself an excuse not to eat more. Because it's like, I feel bloated or I feel too full that I couldn't possibly eat anymore. Whereas I think if you actually just look at it completely differently and just think, you know what, my body needs these foods. I'm going to feel like I've got loads of energy. My body's going to be happy. I'm one step closer to my goal. I'm one step closer to having a normal cycle, having a healthy body. I think if you kind of look at it that way, then it completely changes your mindset on, those feelings, and you start to almost embrace those feelings, because actually they're a good sign that you're doing the right thing. Those who want to know a little bit more on my pattern of weight gain and how that changed over the 3 months, I've touched upon this in my previous videos, but just to give you a little bit more information, I started at about 51, 52 kg and ended up at the end of the 3 months when I regained my period at about 57 kg, and then I'm now at about 58 kg.
I'm going to go between kilograms and pounds, which I know is a bit annoying, but I kind of tracked my weight gain in terms of pounds, but monitored my weight in terms of kilograms. Don't know why.
So I set myself a goal to increase my weight by at least 10 pounds, which I think is 5 kg. So I set myself that as a target for no other reason than get me up to that kind of BMI fertile zone, they call it, which is pretty much a BMI of about 22, 23. And I knew if I gained at least 10 pounds that I would pretty much be there. So when I first started, I first went all in, like I say, I was about 52 kg. And once I started to increase my calories, I gained around about a pound per week, maybe just less, so probably about 0.75 to a pound a week. So within 3 months, so probably about 2.5 months, I'd gained that 10 pounds. And yes, that sounds like quite a lot within quite a short period of time, but actually it felt quite gradual at the time. It wasn't like as soon as I started eating 2,500 calories, I put on 5 pounds within a week, which I think some people do think that they're all of a sudden just going to pile on the pounds. By the time I'd got a period back, I was pretty much bang on 10, 11 pounds worth of weight gain. And then I've gained probably about another couple of pounds since then. So my period back in October, 3 months after going all in, and then 4 months where I've been hovering around kind of maintenance surplus calories, and I've only gained a further 1 kg, so a further couple of pounds. And I think once I hit that 10 pound weight increase and I was at about 57 kg, my body just, I think, found a happy spot. I think they sometimes refer to like your body's sort of set point weight. And I definitely believe in that theory. So my body hit that set point weight at 57 kg, 58 kg. And since then, I've just kind of plateaued. So although I've pretty much been eating a similar amount, I've not continued to gain. And I think a lot of girls worry that they're just going to keep gaining weight forever. And it's not the case. Your body does sort of get to a point where actually it levels out. It gets to a happy point. For me, that was actually the weight I was at probably about 10 years ago, when I was probably just out of uni. And although I was on the pill, so I don't know if I would have had a normal period then, I definitely felt happy and comfortable in that weight. And I wasn't, I was just a general good healthy weight. And I think that's obviously where my body was happy at. And that was before I did, in fairness, start all the exercise and sort of lost weight and built muscle and that kind of thing. And yes, a lot of it is fat, because I've had some questions asked by girls of, oh, you know, are you gaining muscle? Or, you know, I don't want to gain fat, I want to gain as little fat as possible. And unfortunately, it's just one of those things you've got to do. Your body needs that fat to be healthy. Women need, you know, fat around the hips and the body to produce these healthy hormones. I think that takes a lot of getting used to, and this is something I want to do another video on, kind of the impact of weight gain and how you deal with that, because I think that is probably the hardest part of it all, really, is going through how you can kind of cope with the weight gain and things like having to go up dress sizes and all those kind of things. And it will be something I'll cover in a future video. So I guess just a couple of points I want to finish on is basically say it's not forever. So obviously continue to gain weight forever. You won't. Once you get your period back, once your body's at a healthy, happy place, you can manipulate those things again. You know, if you really wanted to lose weight again, you probably could. I mean, I think you've got to be cautious with those kind of things, and particularly for quite a long period of time after getting your period back, you definitely wouldn't want to just go back into a calorie deficit and reduce your calories back, because your body just would react. You don't have to keep gaining weight forever. It is just a short period to get your period back and to get your body in a sort of happy, healthy place. Another thing of note that I found quite interesting when I read the other day was that there's no correlation between how long you've been without your period as to how long it takes to get it back. So I was overall without period for about a year before it came back, but I know some people are 2, 3, 4 years without a period, but actually there's absolutely no correlation between length of time with no period as to how long it takes to get it back. So you could still be like me and get it back within 3 months if you do all the right things. I think you've just got to commit to that process. So I hope you found this useful, and I am going to film a what I eat in a day tomorrow, because I do want to break up the sit down videos with something that is a little bit more. But yeah, I hope it was useful. Any questions, pop them below, more than happy to answer them. And like I said, there is still lots more I want to go into in terms of weight gain, in terms of some of the blood tests I had done, even just going into a little bit more things like what is HA, what the risks to your body of not recovering your period, all those kind of things. But if there's any suggestions, again, comment them below. And yeah, if you like this video, please like and please subscribe. It really does mean a lot, and I just want to keep bringing you as much value as possible with these videos. And I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you.